What would you do if you discovered that the person cleaning your floors was secretly one of the greatest composers of our time? On a cold November night in Chicago, someone heard music coming from the Symphony Center. The building was supposed to be empty. The lights were off. The doors were locked. But there it was, piano music. Not just any piano music. Something profound. Something that seemed to carry the weight of decades within every note. Security guard Sarah Mitchell followed the sound through darkened hallways until she reached Studio B. She opened the door slowly, and what she saw would change everything. There, illuminated only by the city lights filtering through tall windows, sat Raymond Porter, the janitor. His fingers moving across the keys of a forgotten Steinway, playing a composition so beautiful, so heartbreaking, that Sarah stood frozen, unable to breathe. This is the story of Raymond Porter and the concerto that should have never been hidden. Raymond Porter was 67 years old when his secret was discovered. For 43 years, he had worked as a janitor at the Chicago Symphony Center. Every morning at 5, he arrived before anyone else. Every evening at 11, he left long after everyone had gone home. In between, he cleaned. He mopped floors that had been walked on by the world's greatest musicians. He dusted chairs where legendary conductors had sat. He polished brass that had reflected standing ovations. To everyone who knew him, Raymond was simply the quiet janitor. He was a tall man with silver hair and hands that looked too refined for the work they did. His uniform was always immaculate. His manner was always gentle. When people passed him in the hallways, he would nod politely and step aside, making himself smaller, less visible. The musicians barely noticed him. The staff sometimes forgot he was there. He moved through the Symphony Center, like a ghost present, but not truly seen. If you had asked anyone who worked there about Raymond Porter, they would have told you he was reliable, quiet, and completely unremarkable. But there was something in his eyes, something distant, as if he were always looking at something just beyond what everyone else could see, as if he carried a world inside himself that no one else could enter. Raymond had one peculiar habit that nobody thought much about. Every day during his cleaning rounds, he would spend a few extra minutes in Studio B. It was one of the smaller rehearsal rooms tucked away on the 3rd floor. Inside was an old Steinway grand piano, a beautiful instrument that hadn't been played in years. The Symphony Center had newer pianos, better maintained in more accessible locations. This one had been forgotten. But Raymond never forgot it. He would dust it carefully, almost reverently. He would adjust the bench even though no one sat there. He would open the fallboard and look at the keys, his fingers sometimes hovering above them, but never touching. Not during the day. Never during the day. People assumed he just took pride in his work. They assumed he appreciated the instrument's beauty the way one might appreciate a painting in a museum. Something to admire, but not touch. Something that belonged to a world he could only observe from the outside. They were wrong about Raymond Porter. They were wrong about almost everything. To understand Raymond's story, you have to go back. Back to New Orleans. Back to a small house in the Treme neighborhood, where music was as essential as breathing. Back to 1962, when Raymond was born into a family where every wall vibrated with jazz. His father, William Porter, was a pianist. Not famous, but respected. The kind of musician other musicians talked about with admiration. William played in the clubs on Frenchman Street, his fingers dancing across keys with a fluidity that seemed almost supernatural. He could play anything. Bebop, blues, classical, gospel. He moved between genres like they were rooms in the same house. Raymond's mother, Dorothy, was a singer. Her voice had a quality that could make grown men cry. She sang at churches on Sundays and jazz clubs on Saturday nights, and somehow both felt equally sacred. Raymond's younger sister Claire was learning violin. She was 8 years younger than Raymond, and she worshipped her big brother. In the Porter household, music wasn't a career or a hobby. It was identity. It was language. It was how they loved each other. Raymond was 5 years old when he first sat at his father's piano. William had been practicing, and Raymond had climbed onto the bench beside him. Without instruction, without hesitation, Raymond placed his small hands on the keys and began to play. Not random notes, not childish plunking. He played what he had just heard his father play, note for note, perfectly. William stopped breathing. Dorothy came running from the kitchen. They both stood there watching their son, this tiny child, playing jazz piano, as if he had been doing it for years. From that moment, everything changed. Raymond wasn't just musical. He was a prodigy, a genuine once-in-a-generation talent. By 7, he was playing professionally. By 10, he was studying classical composition at a special program in Baton Rouge. By 15, he was winning national competitions. But Raymond never lost touch with his jazz roots. While other classical prodigies focused solely on Bach and Beethoven, Raymond kept one foot in each world. He would practice Chopin in the morning and improvise jazz standards in the evening. He heard connections between the genres that others didn't see. He understood that great music was great music, regardless of category. His dream was to compose. Not just to play what others had written, but to create something new, something that bridged the worlds he loved. He wanted to write compositions that had the structure and sophistication of classical music, but the soul and spontaneity of jazz. He wanted to create something that had never existed before, and he was good enough to do it. At 17, his first major composition, a piano trio, was performed by professional musicians in New Orleans. Critics called it astonishingly mature and a glimpse of the future. One reviewer wrote, "Raymond Porter will be one of the defining composers of his generation." Raymond believed them. How could he not? He was young, talented, and the world was opening up before him like a flower. Juilliard had accepted him. He was scheduled to start in the fall of 1979. Everything was perfect. But everything changed one winter night in 1979. It was December 20th. The Porter family was having a Christmas party. The house was full of people, full of music, full of laughter. William was at the piano. Dorothy was singing. Claire was dancing. Raymond was home from a competition in New York, still glowing from having won first place. It was supposed to be a celebration. It was supposed to be perfect. The fire started in the kitchen. An electrical fault in the old wiring. Nobody noticed at first. By the time someone smelled smoke, the flames had already spread through the walls. Old houses in New Orleans burned fast. Too fast. People screamed. People ran. The music stopped. Raymond was in the backyard when it happened, taking a break from the crowd, looking at the stars, thinking about Juilliard, about his future, about all the music he was going to write. He heard the screams. He turned and saw smoke pouring from the windows. He ran inside. The house was chaos. Smoke everywhere. Heat like a physical wall. People were pushing past him, desperate to get out. He fought against the crowd, going deeper into the house. He was looking for them. His father, his mother, his sister. He found Claire first. She was in her room, too scared to move, crying. He grabbed her and carried her toward the door. The stairs were already burning. He had to find another way. He kicked through a window, held Claire tight, and jumped. They landed hard. Claire was coughing but alive. Raymond told her to run, to get away from the house. Then he turned back. He tried to go back inside. He tried to save them. But the firefighters had arrived and they held him back. They wouldn't let him go in. They told him it was too late. They told him no one could survive in there. They were right. William Porter died in the music room trying to save his piano. They found him collapsed beside it, his hands still reaching for the keys. Dorothy Porter died in the kitchen where the fire had started. She had been trying to put it out. Claire Porter died in the ambulance on the way to the hospital. The smoke had damaged her lungs too severely. She was 8 years old. Raymond survived. Physically, his body healed from the burns and the smoke inhalation. But something inside him broke that night. Something fundamental. Something that wouldn't heal. He didn't go to Juilliard. He couldn't. How could he make music when music had died with his family? How could he compose when every note reminded him of what he had lost? He stayed in New Orleans for 3 months after the funeral. 3 months of walking through a city that used to feel like home, but now felt like a graveyard. Every street corner had a memory. Every jazz club was a reminder. Every piano he saw made him want to scream. So he left. In March of 1980, Raymond Porter bought a bus ticket to Chicago. He didn't know anyone there. He had no plan. He just needed to be somewhere that didn't remember him, somewhere he could disappear. He arrived in Chicago with 1 suitcase and $200. He was 22 years old. He had been destined for greatness. Now he was nobody. He got a job washing dishes at a restaurant, then cleaning offices, then eventually working as a janitor at the Chicago Symphony Center. The irony wasn't lost on him. A janitor at a symphony center. Cleaning up after musicians. Being invisible in the one place where he should have belonged. He told himself he would never play piano again. Never compose again. That part of his life was over. Music had taken everything from him. He was done with it. But what nobody knew was that Raymond never truly stopped. For the first few years, Raymond kept his promise to himself. He didn't touch a piano. He didn't listen to music if he could help it. He lived in a small apartment on the south side of Chicago, worked his shifts, and spent his free time walking the city streets or reading in libraries. But music doesn't let go that easily. Not when it's in your blood. Not when it's as much a part of you as breathing. It started small. 3 years after the fire, Raymond was cleaning Studio B late one night. Everyone had gone home. The building was silent. He was dusting the old Steinway, and his hand brushed across the keys. Just one note. An accident. The sound filled the room. Clear, pure, beautiful. Raymond froze. He hadn't heard a piano in 3 years. He had forgotten how it felt. How it resonated not just in your ears, but in your chest, in your bones. He pressed another key, then another. Before he knew what he was doing, he was sitting on the bench. His fingers were on the keys, and he was playing. It all came flooding back. The muscle memory, the instinct, the way his hands knew what to do before his mind could catch up. He played for 10 minutes that night, just simple melodies, nothing complicated. But when he stopped, he was crying. He told himself it was just once, just that one time. But the next night he found himself back in Studio B, and the night after that, and the night after that. It became a ritual. Every night after his shift ended, after everyone had gone home, Raymond would go to Studio B. He would lock the door. He would sit at the Steinway. And he would play. At first, he only played other people's music, songs his father used to play, compositions he had learned as a child. It was a way of remembering, a way of keeping his family alive. But gradually, slowly, something else started to happen. New melodies began emerging. Harmonies that didn't belong to anyone else. Music that came from somewhere deep inside him, from the part of himself he thought had died in that fire. Raymond was composing again. He didn't plan it. He didn't want it. It just happened. The music demanded to exist. And Raymond, despite everything, couldn't stop it. He started bringing manuscript paper to work. During his breaks, hiding in maintenance closets or empty offices, he would write. Measures, movements, entire sections of what was becoming a piano concerto. It was massive. 3 movements, each one exploring a different aspect of his journey. The first movement, which he called Absence, dealt with loss. It was dark, dissonant, full of pain. The melodies were fragments, broken things that couldn't quite come together. It sounded like grief felt. The second movement, Wandering, was about the 40 years he had spent in Chicago, in exile, in hiding. It was neither happy nor sad. It was empty, searching. The music moved in circles, always looking for something it couldn't find. But underneath the emptiness, there were hints of something else. Jazz rhythms, his father's influence, ghosts of joy that used to exist. The third movement, Reconciliation, was about acceptance, about finding peace. The melodies from the first movement returned, but transformed, healed. The brokenness became wholeness. The pain became beauty. The jazz elements and classical structure finally merged completely seamlessly, creating something entirely new. Raymond worked on this concerto for 40 years. Every night, adding a measure here, revising a section there. Some nights he wrote nothing, just played through what already existed, making sure it was right, making sure it was true. He never intended for anyone to hear it. This wasn't music for performance. This was therapy. This was survival. This was how Raymond Porter stayed alive when part of him wanted to die. He wrote the entire score by hand on manuscript paper he bought from a music store near his apartment. Thousands of pages. Every note carefully placed. Every dynamic marking considered. Every articulation precise. He kept it all in an old filing cabinet in Studio B. The cabinet was in a corner covered with cleaning supplies. Nobody ever looked inside it. Nobody had any reason to. It was just janitor stuff, equipment, rags, bottles of polish. Except in the bottom drawer under a stack of old towels was the complete score for Raymond Porter's piano concerto in D minor. A masterpiece that existed in shadows. Music that had never been heard by anyone except its creator. For 4 decades, this concerto lived in secret. Raymond would come to Studio B every night, play through sections, make adjustments, add new ideas. It became his whole world. During the day, he was Raymond the janitor, invisible and forgotten. But at night, in that small studio with the old Steinway, he was Raymond the composer. He was the person he was supposed to be. Nobody knew. Not the musicians who walked past him in the hallways. Not the conductors who sometimes asked him to move his cleaning cart out of the way. Not the administrative staff who processed his paychecks. Raymond Porter was their janitor. Nothing more. But what would happen if someone found out? What would happen if his secret was discovered? The answer came on a November night in 2023. Sarah Mitchell had been working security at the Chicago Symphony Center for 5 years. It was usually an easy job. Check doors, monitor cameras, walk the halls, make sure everything was locked up. Most nights nothing happened. But on November 15th, something was different. Sarah was doing her 11 o'clock rounds when she heard it. Music. Piano music coming from somewhere on the 3rd floor. That was strange. The building had been closed for 2 hours. Everyone was supposed to be gone. Her first thought was that someone had broken in. but the doors were all locked. The alarm system showed no breaches. Everything was secure. The music continued. It wasn't recorded music. This was someone actually playing. And whoever it was, they were good. Really good. Sarah followed the sound, down the third-floor corridor, past the administrative offices, toward Studio B. The music was getting louder, more clear. It was beautiful, haunting, unlike anything Sarah had ever heard. She reached the studio door. It was closed, but not locked. Light came from underneath. Someone was definitely in there. Sarah hesitated. Should she call the police? But this didn't feel like a break-in. The music was too intentional, too careful. This was someone who belonged here, even if they weren't supposed to be here at this hour. She opened the door slowly. Raymond was at the piano. His back was to her, his fingers moving across the keys with absolute certainty. His eyes were closed. He was completely lost in the music. Sarah stood in the doorway, transfixed. She had worked in this building for 5 years. She had heard hundreds of performances. She had listened to some of the world's greatest pianists. But she had never heard anything like this. The music was technically brilliant, complex harmonies, intricate rhythms. But it was more than that. It had emotion, real emotion. Not performed emotion, but something genuine. Something that came from deep inside the person playing it. Sarah pulled out her phone. She didn't know why. Some instinct told her this was important. This needed to be recorded. She started recording video. Raymond played for another 5 minutes before he stopped. He sat there, hands resting on the keys, breathing slowly. Then he opened his eyes. And that's when he saw Sarah's reflection in the polished wood of the piano. He turned around slowly. His face went pale. For a moment, neither of them spoke. "I'm sorry," Raymond finally said. His voice was quiet. "I didn't mean to. I'll leave." "Wait," Sarah said. "Don't go." "What was that?" "What were you playing?" Raymond stood up. He looked caught. Guilty, like a child caught doing something forbidden. "Nothing. It's nothing. I shouldn't have been in here." "That wasn't nothing," Sarah said. "That was incredible." "Did you write that?" Raymond didn't answer. He started moving toward the door, but Sarah stepped in his way. "Please," she said. "I'm not going to get you in trouble. I need to know what that was." Raymond looked at her. Really looked at her. And maybe it was because he was tired. Or maybe it was because he had been carrying this secret for 40 years and part of him wanted to let it go. Or maybe it was because Sarah's eyes were kind and Raymond hadn't seen kindness directed at him in a very long time. "It's a concerto," he said quietly. "I've been writing it. For a long time. You're a composer, I was. A long time ago. But not anymore." "That didn't sound like 'not anymore,'" Sarah said. "That sounded like a masterpiece." Raymond shook his head. "Nobody needs to hear it. It's just for me. It's how I remember." Sarah didn't understand what he meant, but she knew she had witnessed something important, something that shouldn't stay hidden. Over the next week, Sarah thought about that night constantly. She listened to the recording she had made dozens of times. She showed it to her girlfriend, who was a music teacher. Her girlfriend cried. "Sarah?" She said, "This is extraordinary. Who is this person? The janitor at my work. The janitor, Sarah. This person needs to be heard. This music needs to exist in the world." Sarah knew her girlfriend was right. But she also knew Raymond had kept this secret for a reason. She couldn't just betray his trust. She needed to do this carefully. She went to the one person she thought might understand. Dr. Elizabeth Hayes. Dr. Hayes was the music director of the Chicago Symphony Center. She was 60 years old, had a doctorate from Yale, and had spent her entire life in classical music. She was brilliant, demanding, and deeply passionate about discovering new talent. Sarah sent her an email with the recording attached. The subject line was simple: "You need to hear this." Dr. Hayes listened to the recording 3 times in a row. Then she called Sarah. "Where did this come from?" "I found someone playing in Studio B after hours." "Who?" "Raymond Porter. He's a janitor here." There was a long pause. "The janitor, yes." "The Raymond Porter who's been cleaning this building for 40 years, yes." Another pause. "I need to meet him." Dr. Hayes went to the Symphony Center that night. She found Raymond in one of the storage rooms organizing cleaning supplies. When he saw her, he froze. "Mr. Porter," she said, "we need to talk." Raymond knew immediately what this was about. He felt his stomach drop. "I'm sorry. I know I shouldn't have been using the studio. I'll stop." "I'll stop," Dr. Hayes interrupted. "Mr. Porter, I don't want you to stop. I want you to show me everything." "I don't understand." "Sarah Mitchell sent me a recording of you playing. I've listened to it multiple times. Mr. Porter, that music is extraordinary. I need to see the full score." Raymond felt panic rising in his chest. This was his worst fear: being discovered, being exposed, having to explain, having to go back to being that person he used to be. "I can't," he said. "It's not finished. It's not ready. It's not." "Mr. Porter," Dr. Hayes said gently, "how long have you been working on this piece?" Raymond looked at the floor. 40 years. 40 years? Dr. Hayes repeated. "I think it's ready." They stood there in the storage room, surrounded by mops and buckets and bottles of floor cleaner. The music director of the Chicago Symphony Center and a janitor who was secretly a genius. "I'm afraid," Raymond finally admitted. Of what? Of what happens if people hear it? Of what it means? Of having to explain why I hid, why I gave up, why I wasted all those years. Dr. Hayes stepped closer. "Mr. Porter." "Raymond, you didn't waste those years. You spent them creating something beautiful. That's not waste. That's devotion. That's love." Raymond's eyes filled with tears. "Please," Dr. Hayes said, "show me the concerto." Raymond led her to Studio B. He opened the filing cabinet. He pulled out the bottom drawer, and he handed Dr. Hayes a stack of manuscript paper 3 inches thick. She sat down at the piano bench and started reading. Her hands were shaking. As her eyes moved across the pages, tears began streaming down her face. When she looked up at Raymond, her voice was barely a whisper. "This is one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen." Dr. Hayes took the score home that night. She didn't sleep. She couldn't. She spent the entire night reading through Raymond's concerto, and with every page her amazement grew. The technical mastery was obvious. The voice leading was flawless. The harmonic language was sophisticated and original. The structural architecture was brilliant. But what struck her most was the emotional authenticity. Every note felt necessary. Every phrase felt true. This wasn't music written to impress. This was music written because it needed to exist. The next morning, she called an emergency meeting with the Symphony Center's Artistic Committee. These were 5 of the most respected musicians in Chicago. People who had spent their lives in serious music. People who were not easily impressed. Dr. Hayes handed out copies of the first movement. "I need you to sight read this." "What is it?" one of them asked. "Just play it. Then we'll talk." They played. At first with skepticism, then with growing interest, then with absolute focus. When they finished, nobody spoke for a full minute. "Who wrote this?" the principal cellist finally asked. "Raymond Porter." "I don't know that name. He works here. He's been working here for 43 years. Doing what? He's our janitor." The room erupted. A janitor. This music was written by a janitor. It wasn't possible. This level of sophistication, this depth of musical understanding, this only came from years of study, from conservatory training, from immersion in the classical tradition. Dr. Hayes let them express their disbelief. Then she told them Raymond's story. Everything she had learned. The prodigy from New Orleans. The tragedy. The 40 years of silence. The secret composing. The life lived in hiding. By the time she finished, everyone in the room was crying. "We need to perform this," the principal violinist said. "I agree," Dr. Hayes said. "But first we need to make sure Raymond is ready. He's not just a composer coming out with a new work. He's a man who's been hiding for 4 decades. We need to be careful. We need to be respectful." Over the next 2 weeks, Dr. Hayes met with Raymond every day. She brought different musicians to hear him play sections of the concerto. She helped him understand that this wasn't about resurrecting his old career. This wasn't about making him famous. This was simply about letting his music exist in the world the way it deserved to exist. Raymond was terrified, but he was also, for the first time in 40 years, feeling something like hope. The Symphony Center scheduled a full orchestra reading. No audience. Just musicians. They wanted to hear how the piece sounded with all the instruments together. Raymond sat in the empty hall, watching as 70 musicians prepared to play his music. Music that had only existed in his head and on that old Steinway in Studio B. He felt like he might throw up. The conductor was a woman named Margaret Chen, one of the most respected conductors in America. She had read through the score 3 times. She told Dr. Hayes it was the most exciting new work she had encountered in 20 years. Margaret raised her baton. The orchestra began. The first movement started with a single piano note. Then the strings entered quiet and dark. The music built slowly, adding layers of sound, creating a texture that was both dense and transparent. The melodies were fragments, searching for each other, never quite connecting. It was beautiful and heartbreaking. Raymond closed his eyes. He was hearing his music for the first time, the way it was meant to be heard. Not on a single piano, but with the full palette of orchestral colors. It was overwhelming. When the movement ended, Margaret stopped. She turned to Raymond. "More?" she asked. He nodded. They played the second movement, the wandering section, the music that captured 40 years of exile. The orchestra navigated the complex rhythms perfectly. The jazz influences became clear the way Raymond had woven syncopation and blues harmonies into a classical structure. It shouldn't have worked. It shouldn't have made sense. But it did. Perfectly. By the time they reached the third movement, half the orchestra was crying. The reconciliation. The healing. The way the broken fragments from the first movement finally came together. The way pain transformed into beauty. The way the piano and orchestra found each other, supported each other, completed each other. The final chord resonated through the hall. Silence. Then, spontaneously, the orchestra members started tapping their bows against their music stands. In the orchestra world, this is the highest compliment. This is how musicians applaud. Raymond sat there, overwhelmed. These people, these incredible musicians, were applauding his work. The work he had hidden. The work he thought nobody would ever hear. Margaret approached him. She took his hands in hers. "Raymond," she said, "this needs to have a premiere. A real premiere. With an audience. This music needs to be heard." Word spread quickly through the classical music community. A lost masterpiece, a forgotten genius, a janitor who was secretly a brilliant composer. The story was irresistible. Media outlets started calling. NPR wanted an interview. The Chicago Tribune wanted to write a feature. Classical music magazines wanted to know everything. But Raymond wasn't ready for that. Not yet. Dr. Hayes protected him, kept the press at bay, gave him space to process everything that was happening. The Symphony Center scheduled the official premiere for February 10th, 2024. 3 months away. That would give them time to rehearse properly. Time to do the piece justice. Time for Raymond to prepare himself mentally and emotionally. Raymond spent those 3 months in a state of constant anxiety. Part of him wanted to cancel everything, to go back to being invisible. To hide again. It was safer that way, easier. But another part of him, the part he had suppressed for 40 years, was waking up. The composer. The artist. The person he was supposed to be. Dr. Hayes helped him through it. They talked every week, sometimes every day. She understood what he was going through. She understood that this wasn't just about music. This was about identity. This was about grief. This was about finally letting himself be seen. Raymond started having dreams about the fire again, dreams he hadn't had in years. He would wake up gasping, his heart racing, seeing his father's face in the flames, seeing Claire reaching for him. "I don't know if I can do this," he told Dr. Hayes one afternoon. "Every time I think about standing on that stage, I think about them, about what they didn't get to do, about how I survived, and they didn't." "Raymond," Dr. Hayes said gently, "this concerto is your way of honoring them. Every note is a memory. Every phrase is love. You didn't waste your life. You spent it creating a monument to the people you lost. That's not waste. That's devotion." Raymond cried. He had been holding so much inside for so long. The rehearsals intensified as the premiere date approached. Raymond attended every one. At first, he sat in the back of the hall, trying to be invisible even there. But gradually, Margaret convinced him to come closer, to sit where he could really hear, to be part of the process. The musicians treated him with reverence. They asked him questions about tempo, about dynamics, about his intentions for specific passages. Raymond had never experienced anything like this. People cared about his music. People wanted to understand it. People wanted to do it justice. 1 week before the premiere, Raymond walked through the Symphony Center during the day, for the first time in 43 years, not as a janitor, but as a composer. People recognized him. They stopped him in the hallways. They told him how much they loved his work. They thanked him for creating something so beautiful. It felt surreal, like a dream, like a life that belonged to someone else. But it was his life. Finally, the night of the premiere arrived, February 10th, 2024. The Chicago Symphony Center was sold out. 1,500 people filled every seat. Critics had flown in from New York, Los Angeles, London. This wasn't just a premiere. This was an event. Backstage, Raymond was trying not to panic. He wore a suit that Dr. Hayes had helped him pick out. He looked in the mirror and barely recognized himself. The janitor uniform was gone. In its place was someone who looked like a composer, but he didn't feel like a composer. He felt like an imposter. Dr. Hayes found him 20 minutes before the concert was scheduled to start. "How are you doing?" "I think I'm going to be sick." "That's normal. That's good, actually. It means you care." "I care too much. I can't do this. I can't go out there." Dr. Hayes sat down beside him. "Raymond, look at me. You've already done the hard part. You wrote the music. You survived 40 years. You found a way to keep creating even when everything in you wanted to give up. Walking on that stage. That's the easy part. What if they hate it? What if they won't hate it? But even if they did, would that change what this music means? Would that change what you've accomplished? Raymond took a deep breath. No. Exactly. This music exists now. It's real. It's out there. Nothing can take that away. The 5-minute warning came. Time to go. Raymond walked through the backstage corridors, the same corridors he had walked as a janitor for 43 years. But everything felt different now. He was different now. He reached the stage entrance. Through the curtain, he could hear the audience. 1,500 people waiting for his music. Music that had been silent for 40 years. Margaret was already on stage waiting to make the introduction. The house lights dimmed. The audience quieted. Ladies and gentlemen, Margaret's voice filled the hall. Tonight, you will hear something extraordinary. A world premiere of a piano concerto by Raymond Porter, a work that has waited 40 years to be heard. But before we begin, I'd like Mr. Porter to come out and say a few words. Raymond's heart stopped. She hadn't told him about this part, but there was no turning back now. He walked onto the stage. The audience applauded. Not polite applause. Real applause. They had read the program notes. They knew his story. They were applauding before they had even heard a single note. Raymond stood at the microphone. His hands were shaking. He looked out at all those faces. 1,500 people. Strangers. All of them waiting to hear what he had to say. I'm not good at speeches, he started. His voice was quiet. Uncertain. I'm better with music than words. But I want to tell you, this concerto is not just notes on a page. It's 40 years of my life. It's every person I loved and lost. It's every night I spent alone in a practice room trying to make sense of things that don't make sense. It's grief and hope and survival. So when you listen tonight, you're not just hearing music, you're hearing my life. He stepped back from the microphone. The audience was silent. Then they applauded again. Louder this time. Raymond walked to the piano. It was a beautiful Steinway Model D, the finest concert grand in the building, not the old piano from Studio B. But Raymond wished it was. That piano knew him. That piano had been his companion through everything. He sat down, adjusted the bench, placed his hands over the keys, took a breath. Margaret raised her baton. The concerto began. The first note Raymond played was soft, almost questioning, like a voice calling into darkness, not knowing if anyone will answer. The orchestra entered, surrounding that single note, with harmonies that were both dissonant and beautiful. The first theme emerged, fragmented, broken, like pieces of something that used to be whole. Raymond had played this music thousands of times in Studio B, but playing it here now with a full orchestra in front of 1,500 people was completely different. Every note felt magnified. Every phrase felt exposed. The first movement was about loss, about the moment everything breaks. Raymond poured 40 years of grief into those keys. He played the night of the fire. He played his father's hands reaching for the piano. He played Claire's last breath. He played the silence that came after. In the audience, people wept. Not polite tears, real crying. Because this wasn't abstract music. This was pain made audible. This was what grief sounds like when it's transformed into art. The movement built to a devastating climax. The orchestra swelled, The piano struggled against it, fighting, refusing to be overwhelmed. But the music didn't resolve. It didn't offer comfort. It ended on an unresolved chord, a question without an answer. Silence. Then the second movement began, without pause. This was the wandering section, the 40 years. The music was neither happy nor sad. It was empty, searching. The piano moved through patterns that repeated but never quite arrived anywhere. The orchestra supported it but couldn't guide it. They were all lost together. But buried in that emptiness were glimpses of something else. Jazz rhythms, blues harmonies, Raymond's father's influence, ghosts of joy that used to exist. The music wasn't just classical anymore. It was becoming something hybrid, something new. This movement was longer, more complex. It tested the audience's patience. Some pieces try to entertain. This piece asked for attention, for presence, for willingness to sit with discomfort. Raymond's fingers flew across the keys. The technical demands were enormous. Rapid scales, leaping chords, polyrhythms that required absolute precision. But Raymond navigated it all with ease. This was muscle memory built over 40 years. His hands knew every note. As the movement progressed, the music gradually shifted. Almost imperceptibly, the emptiness started filling with something. Not joy, not yet, but possibility. The fragments from the first movement started reappearing, but changed. Softer, less sharp, beginning to heal. The movement ended quietly, the piano alone. A single repeated note that faded into silence. In the audience, people were holding their breath. The third movement. Reconciliation. It began with the piano alone, playing a melody that was simple, almost childlike. It was a folk tune Raymond's father used to play, a lullaby his mother used to sing. It was the past, but transformed, remembered with love instead of pain. The orchestra entered gently, adding color, adding support. The piano and orchestra weren't fighting anymore. They were dancing. They were conversing. They were healing each other. The broken fragments from the first movement returned, but now they fit together. The pieces that had been scattered found their way home. The music built slowly, carefully toward something like joy. Not innocent joy. Joy that had survived pain. Joy that knew loss and chose to exist anyway. Raymond was crying as he played. He didn't try to stop it. The tears fell onto the keys, but his hands never faltered. He was playing for his father, for his mother, for Claire, for the 40 years he spent in hiding, for the person he used to be and the person he had become. The music reached its climax. The full orchestra, the piano, everything together in a moment of absolute transcendence. It was the moment when pain transforms into beauty, when loss becomes legacy, when survival becomes art. And then slowly, gently, the music began to wind down. The orchestra faded. The piano continued alone, playing the same simple melody from the beginning. But now it was a benediction, a farewell, a thank you. The final note, a single key, middle C, the simplest note in music. Raymond held it until the sound completely faded into silence. He lifted his hands from the piano, sat still. The hall was completely silent. Then someone in the back row stood up. Then someone else. Then everyone. 1,500 people rose to their feet. The applause started. But it wasn't polite concert applause. This was something else. This was recognition. This was gratitude. The standing ovation lasted 15 minutes. People were crying, people were shouting. The orchestra members were tapping their bows frantically. Margaret was weeping. Dr. Hayes, standing in the wings, had her hand over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Raymond sat at the piano, overwhelmed. He couldn't move, couldn't stand, couldn't process what was happening. 40 years. 40 years of hiding. And now this. Finally, Margaret helped him to his feet. She guided him to the front of the stage. The applause grew louder. Raymond tried to bow, but his legs were shaking so badly he almost fell. Margaret caught him, held him steady. "You did it," she whispered. "You actually did it." Raymond looked out at the audience. All those faces. All that love. He had spent 40 years believing his life was wasted, that his talent had been squandered, that the fire had destroyed not just his family, but his future. But he had been wrong. The music had survived. He had survived. And now finally the world could hear what he had created from the ashes. When the applause finally died down, and Raymond walked off stage, he collapsed. Not from exhaustion. From relief. From release. From the weight of 40 years finally lifting off his shoulders. Dr. Hayes knelt beside him. "Are you okay?" Raymond nodded. He couldn't speak. But he was smiling. Really smiling. For the first time in 4 decades, Raymond Porter was exactly where he was supposed to be. The premiere of Raymond Porter's piano concerto in D minor became one of the most talked about events in classical music. The reviews were extraordinary. The New York Times called it one of the most important American compositions of the century. The Chicago Tribune wrote, "Porter's concerto doesn't just tell a story, it resurrects a soul." Within weeks, orchestras around the world were asking to perform it. The Berlin Philharmonic, the London Symphony, the Tokyo Philharmonic. Everyone wanted to program this piece. Everyone wanted to be part of this story. Raymond was offered everything. Teaching positions at major conservatories, commissions for new works, invitations to festivals and conferences. The classical music world wanted to embrace him, to celebrate him, to make up for the 40 years he had been invisible. But Raymond surprised everyone. He turned most of it down. He agreed to a few interviews. He accepted an invitation to attend performances of his concerto in New York and Los Angeles. But he didn't want to become famous. He didn't want to be a celebrity composer. What he wanted was simpler. He wanted to keep his job at the Chicago Symphony Center. When Dr. Hayes heard this, she was confused. "Raymond, you don't have to clean floors anymore. You're a respected composer. You can do anything." "I know," Raymond said. "But this hall saved my life. This building gave me a place to survive. I don't want to leave it." So a compromise was reached. Raymond would continue working at the Symphony Center, but not as a janitor. He became composer in residence. He had an office. He was invited to rehearsals. He mentored young composers who came through the education programs. But he still went to Studio B every night. He still sat at that old Steinway, not to compose anything new, just to play, just to remember. The concerto was recorded by the Chicago Symphony Orchestra with Raymond as soloist. The album was released and became one of the best-selling classical recordings of the decade. Music students studied the score in conservatories. Dissertations were written about Raymond's unique fusion of classical and jazz elements. But for Raymond, the most important thing wasn't the acclaim or the recognition. It was something smaller, more personal. 6 months after the premiere, he received a letter. It was from a woman in New Orleans. Her name was Angela Porter. She was his cousin. She had seen news coverage of the premiere. She had recognized his name. "I thought you were dead," she wrote. "After the fire, after you disappeared, we all thought you were gone. But you're alive. You survived. And you created something beautiful. William and Dorothy and Claire would be so proud." Raymond cried when he read that letter. He wrote back, and for the first time in 44 years, he reconnected with his family, the family he thought he had lost forever. They told him about New Orleans, about how the house had been rebuilt, about how the neighborhood still remembered the Porters, about how his father's legacy still lived in the jazz clubs on Frenchman Street. Angela came to Chicago to visit. She brought photos. Pictures of William and Dorothy and Claire that Raymond hadn't seen in decades. They spent hours looking through them, crying and laughing and remembering. "You know what William would say if he could see you now?" Angela asked. "What he'd say you did exactly what you were supposed to do. You took the music and you kept it alive. You turned pain into beauty. That's what great composers do." Raymond's Concerto was performed over 200 times in its first 2 years. Each performance was recorded and sent to Raymond. He listened to every single one, hearing different orchestras, different conductors, different pianists interpreting his work. Each performance was unique. Each one found something new in the music. Young composers started seeking him out. They wanted to know how he did it, how he maintained his craft in isolation, how he stayed disciplined, how he kept creating when no one was listening. Raymond's answer was always the same. "I didn't do it for anyone else. I did it because I needed to survive. The music was how I stayed alive. If other people hear it and find meaning in it, that's a gift. But that was never the point." In 2025, Raymond was invited to speak at the Juilliard School, the same school he was supposed to attend in 1979. The same school he never got to because of the fire. He stood in front of a room full of talented young musicians and told them his story. He didn't sugarcoat it. He told them about the pain, about the decades of hiding, about the nights when he wanted to give up. "People will tell you that talent is enough," he said. "That if you're good enough, success will find you. But that's not true. Life doesn't work that way. Sometimes terrible things happen. Sometimes you lose everything. Sometimes you spend 40 years invisible, forgotten, doing work that nobody notices. But here's what I learned. The music doesn't care about recognition. The music doesn't care about success. The music only cares about existing. If you have something to say, say it. Even if no one is listening. Even if it takes 40 years. Even if you think it doesn't matter. It matters. It always matters." The students gave him a standing ovation. But more importantly, they understood. They understood that art isn't about fame or fortune. It's about truth. It's about survival. It's about turning suffering into something that transcends suffering. Raymond Porter lived the rest of his life quietly. He continued working at the Chicago Symphony Center. He continued mentoring young composers. He wrote 2 more major works, a string quartet and a song cycle. Both were performed and well received, but neither had the impact of his concerto. That piece remained his masterpiece, the work that defined him. People sometimes asked him if he regretted the 40 years, if he wished things had been different, if he wished he had been discovered sooner. His answer never changed. "I regret the fire. I regret losing my family. I regret the pain. But I don't regret the music." Every note of that concerto is true. It could only have been written by someone who lived what I lived. It could only have been created through that specific kind of survival. So no, I don't regret it. I'm grateful it exists. Raymond Porter's Piano Concerto in D minor became a staple of the classical repertoire. It's performed regularly around the world. It's taught in music schools. It's studied by scholars. But more than that, it's loved. It's loved by people who hear their own pain in those notes. It's loved by people who have survived their own fires. It's loved by anyone who has ever felt invisible and longed to be seen. And every time it's performed somewhere in the audience, there's someone hearing it for the first time. Someone whose life is changed by it. Someone who realizes that it's never too late. That talent doesn't have an expiration date. That art can come from anywhere, from anyone, even from the person cleaning the floors. Raymond Porter died in 2031 at the age of 73. He died peacefully in his sleep, in the small apartment he had lived in for 50 years. When the cleaning crew went through his belongings, they found something unexpected. In a drawer, carefully wrapped, was the old towel that used to cover his manuscript in the filing cabinet at Symphony Center. He had kept it. A reminder of where he came from. A reminder that sometimes the most beautiful things exist in the most unexpected places. His funeral was held at the Chicago Symphony Center. The hall was packed. Musicians came from around the world. People he had mentored, people whose lives had been changed by his music. People who had never met him, but felt like they knew him through his concerto. At the end of the service, a pianist played the final movement of Raymond's concerto. Just the piano part alone, without the orchestra. The way Raymond had played it for 40 years in Studio B. The way it had existed before the world discovered it. The music filled the hall, and everyone there understood something profound. Raymond Porter had been a janitor. He had been invisible. He had been forgotten. But he had never stopped being an artist. He had never stopped creating. And in the end, his art had outlived everything else. The pain, the loss, the silence. All of it had been transformed into something eternal. The final note faded. The pianist's hands lifted from the keys, and in that moment everyone in the hall felt the same thing. Gratitude. Not just for the music, but for the reminder that greatness can exist anywhere, that talent doesn't announce itself, that sometimes the most extraordinary people are the ones we walk past every day without noticing. Raymond Porter's story is a reminder that it's never too late. That survival is its own kind of art. That creating something beautiful, even if no one ever hears it, is a victory. And that sometimes, just sometimes, the world does discover what it almost lost. And when it does, it's a gift. So the next time you walk past someone who seems ordinary, someone doing work that seems simple, someone who seems invisible, remember Raymond Porter. Remember that you might be walking past a genius. Remember that everyone carries a world inside them. And remember that sometimes the most beautiful music is the music that waits 40 years to be heard. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that greatness can exist in unexpected places, if it inspired you to see the invisible people in your own life, then Raymond's music has done its job. Subscribe to hear more stories about the extraordinary people hiding in plain sight. Because they're everywhere. You just have to learn how to see them. Raymond Porter taught us that. And that lesson, like his music, will never fade away.